Are you unknowingly harming the most sensitive part of your body every single day? It's a question most men shy away from. We joke about it in locker rooms. We avoid it in doctor's offices, and often, we ignore the warning signs until they become impossible to overlook. Yet behind the silence, something is quietly happening. Habits, so ordinary that you wouldn't think twice about them, are, in fact, damaging your health in ways far deeper than you realize. I'm Dr. Grace Miller. For more than 2 decades, I've worked with men, especially seniors, helping them protect and restore their most intimate health. And what I want to share with you today is both unsettling and empowering. Unsettling because these threats are not rare diseases or obscure medical syndromes. They are everyday choices, things you may have done this morning without a second thought. Empowering because every single one of them can be reversed. Not tomorrow, not months from now, but starting today. Let's be honest. Most men don't talk about changes that happen down there. The stiffness that isn't quite what it used to be, the sensation that feels dulled, distant, unfamiliar. The anxiety of looking at yourself in the mirror and wondering if this is just age or if something more serious is unfolding. These questions rarely make it into polite conversation, even between close friends, and so they fester in silence. But here is what few realize. Your sexual health is not an isolated subject. And your penis is not just about intimacy. It is a messenger, a signal, a check engine light for your entire body. Research from Johns Hopkins shows that erectile problems are often the earliest red flag of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, or circulation issues, conditions that may remain hidden until they suddenly erupt into something life-threatening. Think about that. Long before chest pain or a diagnosis arrives, your body may already be whispering through its most vulnerable organ. Something is wrong. And if you listen early, you can act early. The uncomfortable truth is this. Most of the damage men suffer after 60 isn't inevitable. It isn't the cruel hand of time striking you down. It's preventable. It's the byproduct of 5 common destroyers woven into the fabric of daily life. They chip away slowly, so slowly you may not notice until one day you cannot ignore it. And yet that is where hope lives. Because once you know what these destroyers are, you can dismantle them. Once you understand the mechanics, the why and the how, you can rebuild strength, sensation, and confidence with tools you already possess. In this series, I'm going to walk you through each of the 5 destroyers that threaten men's sexual health after 60. Poor circulation, improper hygiene, tight clothing and wrong underwear, medications with hidden side effects. And finally, the one men rarely consider: lack of use. But I will not just name them. I will show you how to fight back. Simple, practical steps that require no prescriptions, no embarrassing conversations, no miracle pills. Steps grounded in science and proven by decades of observation. Steps that you can begin tonight. Still, before we can talk about what destroys your health, we must first understand what keeps it alive. How does it all actually work? What systems must stay intact for you to feel normal sensation? For your body to respond as it once did? For intimacy to feel natural instead of strained? The answer lies in 3 invisible forces working quietly together every second of your life. Blood flow, nerve sensitivity, tissue health. These 3 are your foundation. When one begins to falter, the others soon follow. And with age, all 3 are under attack. So before we examine the destroyers, let's pause here and step inside the machinery itself to see what keeps it running and what happens when time begins to wear down the parts. Think of your body as an intricate machine where every gear and wire has its purpose. Some parts, like your heart or lungs, we understand as essential. Others, like your sexual function, are often dismissed as secondary, something for pleasure, not survival. But here's the paradox. In medicine, the penis is often one of the first warning lights to flicker when the deeper systems begin to fail. Researchers at Johns Hopkins and the Cleveland Clinic have shown that erectile changes often appear years before a heart attack, before a diabetes diagnosis, before a stroke. Why? Because the blood vessels in your penis are smaller and more delicate than the larger arteries feeding your heart. They are like the narrow back roads before the highway. When circulation begins to clog or stiffen, it is those narrow roads that show cracks first. What you feel or fail to feel in moments of intimacy is often your body's earliest alarm system. Historically, medicine didn't take this connection seriously. For centuries, sexual health was treated as something separate, even shameful. Physicians in the 19th century spoke of nervous exhaustion or male weakness, but rarely linked these conditions to vascular disease. It wasn't until the late 20th century that a shift occurred, when cardiologists began noticing the pattern. Men with erectile problems were far more likely to face heart complications in the years ahead. What seemed like a private issue was, in fact, a public health signal. That is why this matters. Because when you notice changes in function or sensation, you are not just dealing with intimacy. You are receiving an early, precious warning that your circulation, your metabolism, or your nerves may already be under stress. To understand this better, let's break it down into 3 essential pillars. The trio that keeps everything working as it should. The first is blood flow. Your penis is essentially a hydraulic system. When vessels are open, flexible, and healthy, they allow blood to surge into the spongy tissue, creating firmness. Without that flow, nothing works properly. The second is nerve sensitivity. Imagine the nerves as the electrical wiring that transmits sensation to your brain. Healthy nerves mean sharpness, pleasure, responsiveness. When those wires are frayed by diabetes, by injury, by years of slow decline, the signals weaken, leaving you with numbness or delayed response. The third is tissue health. The spongy chambers must remain elastic and responsive. When unused or deprived of oxygen, they can shrink, harden, or lose flexibility. The medical term is penile atrophy, but in simple terms, it means the very structure that once expanded and contracted with ease begins to stiffen like old leather. Think of it this way. Blood flow is the pump, nerves are the wires, tissue is the fabric. If the pump is weak, if the wires are damaged, if the fabric is frayed, the entire system falters. And with age, all 3 pillars are under siege. Hormonal shifts drain testosterone. Blood vessels stiffen under the weight of decades of pressure and diet. Nerves lose sensitivity after years of microscopic injuries from high blood sugar or inflammation. And unused tissue, left idle for too long, begins to wither. But here's the crucial truth. Though these changes are natural with age, they are not destiny. You have more power over this than you think. Lifestyle, awareness, and consistent small actions can preserve these 3 pillars far longer than most men realize. So, as we step forward into the specific destroyers, keep this framework in mind. Blood flow, nerves, tissue, these are the foundations of function. And every destroyer we will discuss chips away at one or all of these vital supports. The question is no longer if age will challenge you. The question is whether you will recognize the challenge early enough to act. And to see what truly happens when age collides with these systems, let us step into the machinery of time itself, how the years slowly, almost invisibly, change your most private health. A man doesn't wake up one morning and suddenly feel old. The decline isn't dramatic, not at first. It's subtle. It creeps in slowly, almost politely, as if time wants to spare you the shock. But beneath the surface, the destroyers are already at work. It often begins in the blood vessels. Cholesterol deposits itself quietly along the inner walls. Each deposit is microscopic at first, almost invisible. But layer by layer, year by year, those channels narrow. Flexibility gives way to stiffness. The arteries that once carried rich, oxygenated blood like rushing rivers now trickle with less force. The penis, relying on the smallest of these vessels, feels it first. Not as pain, not as sudden collapse, but as a faint decline in rigidity, a slower response, a firmness that doesn't last. Next, the nerves. These delicate fibers carry electrical messages at lightning speed. But high blood sugar, inflammation, or even simple wear and tear begins to damage them. Imagine wires stripped of their insulation, sparks escaping, signals growing weaker. The result is muted sensation, a loss of the sharp intensity you once took for granted. This isn't just about pleasure, it's about your brain no longer receiving the full story from your body. The dialogue between mind and manhood grows quieter, fuzzier, until sometimes it barely whispers at all. Then comes the tissue itself. Spongy, flexible, designed to expand and contract with ease. But when blood no longer fills it fully and oxygen no longer bathes it daily, the tissue begins to scar. Slowly, imperceptibly, the elasticity fades. The chambers stiffen. What was once a spring becomes a brittle branch, fragile and unyielding. Doctors call this fibrosis. Men simply experience it as difficulty harder to achieve, harder to sustain, harder to recover. And still, The world rarely speaks of it. Society tells men to accept it as just age, to shrug, to laugh it off, to keep silent. But silence is precisely how these destroyers thrive. Because they are not just private afflictions, they are messengers of deeper truths. When your blood flow weakens below the waist, chances are it is weakening everywhere. When your nerves lose sensitivity, it is rarely only in one place. When your tissues harden, so do your arteries, so do your joints, so does the very fabric of your body. This is why erectile decline is often called the canary in the coal mine, a fragile living alarm that warns of unseen danger ahead. Heart disease, stroke, diabetes, neurodegeneration. But here's the deeper tragedy. Most men ignore it until it's too late. They treat the symptom but not the cause. They reach for pills, for quick fixes, for silence. They forget that this slow, silent enemy is not inevitable. It is a thief that can be caught in the act. Imagine for a moment that you are 50, 60, 70. You begin to notice the change slight at first, undeniable later. You stand at a crossroads. One path is denial, dismissal, quick remedies that mask the problem, but leave the disease to fester. The other path is awareness, action. The courage to see this not as an embarrassment, but as a gift, a warning sign that you can still respond to. Because the truth, uncomfortable though it may be, is this: what fades in your most private health is often a mirror of what is fading in your overall health. And that makes these destroyers not just a story of decline, but an invitation to transformation. So the question becomes, when you hear this alarm, will you ignore it? Or will you see it for what it truly is? Your body's last, desperate way of saying, pay attention, before it's too late. Most men assume that decline comes only with age, that it's written in their DNA or locked inside the ticking clock of time. But the truth is far more unsettling. In the modern world, decline is accelerated not just by years, but by choices, habits, and hidden triggers that most never suspect. These aren't dramatic poisons. They are quiet, ordinary, woven into daily life, and that is what makes them so dangerous. The first hidden trigger is sitting still. Hours at a desk, in a car, or in front of a screen. Modern work and leisure chain the body to the chair, and circulation stagnates. Blood that should flow freely pools in the lower body, and the small arteries that feed the penis weaken from disuse. It's not just lack of exercise, it's the erosion of circulation at its most vital point. A man can be strong in the gym for an hour, but if he spends the other 10 sitting still, the damage is already in motion. The second is sugar and processed food. Few realize how insidiously sugar scars the vessels and nerves. Each spike in blood sugar, each surge of insulin, is like sandpaper across the delicate linings of your arteries. Over time, those linings thicken, stiffen, and lose their ability to expand. The same mechanism that leads to diabetes slowly strangles sexual function years before any doctor mentions the word diabetes. Men blame stress, blame age, but beneath it all is the steady drip of modern diet corroding their vitality. The third hidden trigger is chronic stress. Not the kind that jolts you once in a while, but the low hum of pressure, responsibility, worry that never leaves. Stress floods the body with cortisol, narrowing vessels, numbing sensation, dulling desire. Worse, it tricks the brain into conserving energy, signaling that reproduction is not a priority in times of danger. Modern life tells a man he must always be on, but physiologically, that message switches his intimacy off. The fourth is sleep deprivation. Testosterone is not built in the boardroom, or the bar, or the glowing screen late at night. It is built in the silent hours of deep sleep. Miss those hours, and the body never completes the cycle of repair, never restores its hormones. One study found that a single week of poor sleep could lower testosterone by as much as 15%. Imagine what years of restless nights, endless scrolling, or late-night work do to the foundations of manhood. The fifth hidden trigger is perhaps the most underestimated: isolation. Men who lose connection, who carry silent loneliness, suffer not only emotionally but physically. Studies show that isolation raises inflammation markers, stiffens arteries, even accelerates mortality. Intimacy is not just physical, it is a whole body experience of connection. Without that, the body begins to wither in silence, long before anyone notices. Each of these triggers: sugar, stress, sleep loss. Isolation chips away at the three pillars we spoke of earlier: blood flow, nerve sensitivity, tissue health. And they do it quietly, invisibly, until one day the change is undeniable. But there's something else. A trigger even more dangerous than all the rest. A trigger so subtle that men rarely recognize it: shame and denial. The refusal to speak of it, to acknowledge it, to seek help or change. Shame keeps men from seeing the truth until it is too late. It is silence that kills more men than any single food, habit, or disease. So what do we do with this knowledge? We look at these triggers not as chains, but as opportunities. Because unlike age, these are not fixed. They are choices, patterns, and circumstances that can be changed. A man may not turn back the clock, but he can stop feeding the silent enemies that accelerate its work. And if he does, something remarkable happens. The canary in the coal mine, the early warning light, can brighten again. Function can return. Sensation can sharpen. Vitality can be restored, not by miracle, but by removing the hidden triggers that poisoned it in the first place. The truth is, your body is not your enemy, it is your messenger. Every signal, every decline is not punishment but warning. And hidden within that warning is the possibility of reclaiming more than you thought you'd lost. Imagine standing at a fork in the road. Behind you lies the years of slow erosion, vessels narrowing, nerves fraying, tissue hardening. Ahead are two paths, one of quiet surrender, where decline continues unchecked, and another of deliberate renewal, where awareness becomes action. Most men assume it's too late once the changes begin. But biology tells us otherwise. The body is not a static machine, it is a living, adaptive system. And even in the later decades of life, it can be coaxed, trained, and restored. The first step is reclaiming blood flow. Movement is not just about muscles, it's about circulation. Every brisk walk, every climb of the stairs, every stretch that makes the heart pump is oxygen and life delivered to the smallest vessels. The penis, often the first to suffer from poor flow, is also one of the first to improve when the rivers of blood begin to run stronger again. Think of it as irrigation. When the streams are unblocked, the fields can bloom once more. The second step is nourishing nerve sensitivity. Nerves thrive on fuel-steady blood sugar, essential vitamins like B12, and the absence of toxins that corrode them. A diet rich in whole foods, lean proteins, healthy fats, and fiber isn't just about weight or cholesterol. It is medicine for the wires that carry sensation. When sugar levels are tamed, when inflammation is calmed, the sparks of nerve transmission grow brighter again. Then comes tissue health. Here, consistency matters most. Just as muscles grow stronger with regular use, penile tissue remains elastic when it is oxygenated and exercised. This is why doctors often speak of use it or lose it. Regular arousal, intimacy, or even simple nighttime erections help preserve flexibility. Where there is blood and oxygen, there is resilience. Without it, fibrosis and stiffness creep in. The message is simple: activity is preservation. But rebuilding is not only physical, it is also hormonal. Testosterone, the quiet engine of male vitality, is shaped not only by age but by habits. Sleep deepens it, resistance training boosts it, stress destroys it. A man who guards his nights, who lifts and moves with intensity, who learns to exhale the weight of chronic pressure. Such a man preserves his hormonal flame long after others let theirs burn out. And then there is the most overlooked factor: connection. Intimacy is not mechanical, it is relational. Men who nurture bonds with partners, with friends, with community feed the body a kind of medicine no supplement can replicate. Oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, these chemicals of connection flow when human bonds are strong. They lower inflammation, soften arteries, sharpen pleasure. The body does not separate the heart from the flesh. What is felt emotionally reverberates physically. The turning point, then, is not a miracle cure or a magic pill. It is a shift in perspective. To stop seeing decline as fate and start seeing it as feedback. Each warning sign is not the end of the road, but a signal to adjust course. It may sound simple, even obvious. But here's the power: most men never act. They notice, they worry, they hide, but they do not respond. Those who do, the few who decide to reclaim circulation, to protect nerves, to preserve tissue, to guard sleep, to nurture connection, discover something remarkable. They do not just restore function, they restore confidence, they restore vitality. They restore a sense of being alive in every sense of the word. Because this story, in the end, is not about sex. It is about life force. About the rivers of blood, the sparks of sensation, the strength of tissue, the fire of hormones, the warmth of connection. It is about refusing to let the slow, silent enemies of age and habit write the ending for you. The turning point is always now, not tomorrow, not someday. Now, every choice is a brushstroke on the canvas of the years ahead. So the question lingers, pressing, urgent, yet full of possibility. If your body is whispering its warning, will you dismiss it as embarrassment, or will you hear it as the invitation it truly is to rebuild from the inside out?
When a man feels his strength waver in this most private part of himself, it is rarely just the body that suffers. It is the mind. It is the heart. It is the quiet story he tells himself in the dark. For centuries, societies have tied a man's worth to his virility. Cultures spoke of potency, vigor, manhood as if one measure defined his identity. And though we live in a modern age free of many old myths, the shadow of that belief still lingers. Men rarely talk about it, but when intimacy falters, confidence falters, when function declines, identity feels shaken. A man who once felt powerful now feels fragile. A man who once felt certain now feels doubt. This is why the emotional wound cuts deeper than the physical one, because it touches the very core of self. In silence, it breeds shame. Shame whispers, "You are less. You are failing. You are not who you once were." And shame thrives in secrecy, growing heavier each time a man hides his truth. Partners feel it too. What begins as a physical change often becomes a wall of distance. Men pull away, fearing rejection, fearing disappointment. They pretend they are tired, pretend they are stressed, pretend they are distracted. But beneath it all is fear that they cannot meet expectations, that they will be seen as weak, that they will no longer be desired. Yet the cruel irony is this: silence does more damage than the condition itself. Many partners, when finally told the truth, respond not with judgment, but with compassion. They long for closeness more than perfection. They crave honesty more than flawless performance. But years of hiding build walls that honesty could have prevented. The emotional toll extends further. Depression, anxiety, loneliness, these shadows often grow in the wake of unspoken struggle. Studies show that men with persistent erectile issues are far more likely to suffer from clinical depression. Not simply because of physical decline, but because of the silent story they carry inside, that they are somehow broken, diminished, or unworthy. This struggle also isolates. Men talk about sports, about work, about politics, but rarely about this. It becomes the great unspoken battle. Even among friends, even among brothers, the silence remains. And so each man feels alone, not realizing that millions share the same burden. But here is the hidden truth. The emotional wound can also be the key to healing, because it forces a man to confront what he has avoided all his life, his vulnerability. To admit need, to admit struggle, to admit fear is not weakness. It is the beginning of connection. It is the doorway to intimacy, both with oneself and with others. When a man speaks, when he shares, when he lets go of shame, something remarkable happens. The weight lifts, the wall softens, the bond with his partner strengthens, the isolation dissolves, and suddenly what felt like a curse becomes a turning point not only for his body, but for his entire life. Because this is not only about restoring function, it is about restoring truth, about stepping into a new kind of manhood, not the one defined by flawless performance, but the one defined by honesty, resilience, and courage. Every scar tells a story, and this struggle, though painful, can become the story of a man who chose to face himself fully, who learned that intimacy is not just what happens in the body, but what happens in the heart. In that sense, the emotional side is not the shadow of the struggle, it is the hidden light. It is the place where shame can turn into strength and silence into connection.
For centuries, the measure of a man was written in narrow terms. His strength was his labor. His worth was his ability to provide. His power was his virility. Entire cultures wove this script so tightly into the fabric of daily life that many men never questioned it. They lived and died believing that their manhood was tied to physical ability alone. But time, nature, and circumstance always tell a different story. The body shifts as it must. Muscles soften. Energy wanes, intimacy changes. And when this happens, the old model of strength collapses. For many men, this collapse feels like a betrayal by their body, by life itself. Yet it is also the invitation to something greater. The truth is that masculinity has never been fixed. It has always been rewritten, generation after generation. The warriors of one age became the builders of the next. The hunters gave way to the farmers to the craftsmen to the thinkers. At every stage, strength was not lost, it was transformed. What looked like decline was in fact evolution. Today, the challenge is not to cling to an outdated idea of power, but to embrace a broader, deeper model of manhood. A model where strength is not measured only in performance, but in presence. Not in the unyielding hardness of the body, but in the enduring resilience of the spirit. This is where many men falter because it requires stepping into vulnerability. The courage to say, I am more than my performance. I am more than my past. I am more than what my body can or cannot do. That is not weakness. That is the greatest act of strength. Think of the men who inspire us most in history. Were they remembered because of perfect health, endless youth, or physical dominance? No. They were remembered for endurance, for wisdom, for compassion, for vision, for refusing to give up when life tested them. These are the qualities that never fade, even when the body changes. Redefining masculinity in this way is not about giving something up. It is about reclaiming what was always there but hidden beneath the noise of expectation. It is about becoming not less of a man but more of a human being, to hold strength and softness at once. To lead with honesty instead of silence. To see vulnerability not as the end of masculinity, but as its completion. And this redefinition ripples outward. When a man embraces this new model of strength, his relationships shift. His partner feels the honesty, the openness, the willingness to face life together. His children witness a father who shows them that manhood is not about denial, but about authenticity. His friends discover a brother who can speak truth instead of hiding behind bravado. The beauty of this transformation is that it does not erase the past. It honors it. The years of labor, the decades of striving, the moments of triumph, all of it remains. But now it is joined by something richer. The wisdom of acceptance, the strength of honesty, the courage to grow beyond what was once believed. So here's the turning point. The decline of one form of masculinity is not the end. It is the beginning of another. A stronger, wiser, deeper model that carries a man not just through his youth, but through every stage of life. The old script says, you are only as strong as your body allows. The new script says, you are as strong as your truth, as enduring as your love, as powerful as your willingness to keep becoming. And in that new script, masculinity is not diminished by change, it is perfected by it. Philosophy can inspire, but practice is what transforms. The journey of reclaiming strength, whether physical, emotional, or intimate, does not happen in a single revelation. It happens in small, repeated choices. The quiet rituals of each day become the architecture of long-term health. And for men past 60, these practices are not luxuries. They are lifelines. The first, and perhaps the most underestimated, is movement. The body was never meant to be still for hours on end, yet modern life has taught us to sit, to slump, to wait for energy instead of cultivating it. But the moment a man chooses to rise, to walk, to stretch, to breathe deeply, he is signaling to his body that life is still in motion. A brisk 30-minute walk each day is not merely exercise, it is a declaration: I am not finished. Research shows that even light but consistent movement improves circulation, boosts testosterone, sharpens the mind, and restores the very functions men fear losing. Next is nourishment. Food is not only fuel, it is medicine or poison. The vessels that carry blood to the most delicate parts of the body are the same vessels clogged by processed foods, excess sugar, and chemical-laden fats. But a plate of greens, berries, salmon, walnuts, and a splash of olive oil is more than a meal, it is restoration. It repairs vessels, lowers inflammation, and renews energy. Every bite is a quiet investment in tomorrow. Sleep too cannot be ignored. Men often boast of little rest, as if exhaustion were a badge of honor. But in truth, sleep is where repair begins. During deep rest, testosterone rises, tissues rebuild, and the nervous system restores its balance. To neglect sleep is to strip the body of its chance to heal. A regular sleep rhythm, a dark, quiet room, and the discipline to put aside screens, these are not trivial habits. They are foundations of vitality. Then there is hydration. Water seems simple, almost too simple to matter. Yet without it, blood thickens, circulation slows, tissues starve. Most men over 60 live in a quiet state of dehydration and never know it. 8 glasses a day, steady and consistent, can bring clarity to the mind, strength to the muscles, and life to the organs that depend on it. But beyond the physical, daily practices of intimacy with oneself are equally vital. Not just sexual activity, though that has its place, but exercises that strengthen the hidden muscles, the pelvic floor. These small, unseen movements, contracting and releasing, create lasting change. They improve blood flow, restore sensation, and give a man control over functions he thought were slipping away. 10 minutes of these exercises, done faithfully, can change the course of a man's health. There is also the practice of stillness, not in the body, but in the mind. Stress is poison that corrodes quietly. Men carry burdens of unspoken fears, regrets, and responsibilities. Meditation, prayer, or even mindful breathing gives the nervous system relief. It lowers cortisol, balances hormones, and clears the fog of anxiety. In stillness, the body finds the freedom to heal. And finally, connection. Human beings were never made to heal in isolation. Sharing fears with a partner, laughing with friends, finding purpose in community, all these keep the spirit alive. A man who eats well, sleeps well, moves well, and yet lives alone in silence is still vulnerable. But one who practices honesty, love, and connection daily discovers a resilience that no disease can easily break. These practices are not glamorous. They do not promise overnight change. But they are steady, reliable, proven by centuries of human experience and by the latest research alike. And when woven together, they create a net strong enough to carry a man through decline into renewal. The secret is this: confidence does not return by waiting for it. It returns when a man proves to himself, day by day, that he is still capable of growth. Every walk, every choice of nourishing food, every stretch of deep sleep, every moment of courage to connect, these are bricks laid in the rebuilding of his strength. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the man who once feared he was fading finds himself standing taller, moving freer, loving deeper. He has not only restored health, he has restored belief. If circulation is the river of a man's body, then hormones are its tide. They shape not only how he functions, but how he feels, thinks, and even sees himself. Among these, testosterone holds the most powerful sway. It is often spoken of as the essence of masculinity, but its reach extends far beyond intimacy or strength. It influences muscle, bone, energy, confidence, even the spark of ambition. And when its levels fall, as they inevitably do with age, the change ripples across every corner of life. By the time a man reaches 60, testosterone levels have often dropped by 30 to 40% compared to his youth. This decline is natural, yet its effects are profound. Fatigue creeps in where energy once burned. Muscle softens despite effort. Weight gathers around the midsection. Bones grow more fragile. And perhaps most painfully, desire diminishes, leaving not only the body but also the spirit quieter than before. Many men mistake this as mere aging, but in truth, it is hormonal imbalance whispering through their system. But testosterone is not a simple switch of on or off. It is a delicate rhythm, a balance that interacts with other hormones, cortisol, insulin, growth hormone. When stress runs high, cortisol rises, suppressing testosterone. When blood sugar spikes from poor diet, insulin surges, disrupting balance further. And when sleep falters, the nightly cycle of hormone production collapses. The result is not only lower testosterone, but a cascade of imbalances that accelerate aging. Yet here is the surprising truth. Decline is not destiny. Science has revealed that many lifestyle choices directly influence testosterone production. Regular resistance training, especially lifting weights, sends a signal to the body. This man still needs strength. In response, testosterone rises. Adequate sleep, 7 to 9 hours, fuels the body's natural rhythm of production. A diet rich in zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, and healthy fats provides the raw materials the body needs to build hormones. Even exposure to morning sunlight triggers a cascade that strengthens hormone balance. But just as natural methods exist, so too do medical interventions. Testosterone replacement therapy, or TRT, has become more common, offering men a chance to restore levels through gels, injections, or pellets. For some, it brings renewed vitality, sharper focus, and a return of intimacy. Yet it is not without risk. Artificially raising hormones without addressing the root causes can lead to complications, heart strain, prostate issues, dependency. That is why no man should pursue it without guidance from a trusted physician, regular testing, and an understanding that hormones are not isolated levers but part of a vast interconnected system. Equally important is the recognition that hormones are not only chemical, they are emotional. A man who feels desired, purposeful, and connected often experiences higher natural testosterone than one who feels invisible, stressed, or isolated. Intimacy itself, whether through physical touch or emotional closeness, raises levels naturally. In this way, human connection is not just comfort, it is medicine. History offers an intriguing perspective here. Ancient physicians, from the Greek healers to Chinese herbalists, recognized patterns of decline in older men long before hormones were understood. They prescribed rest, strength-building exercises, foods rich in minerals, and practices of balance between work and rest. Though they lacked the scientific language, they understood the truth modern science confirms. Vitality is not only a matter of age, but of rhythm, balance, and care. So the path forward is not about chasing eternal youth or fearing decline. It is about listening to the body's signals and working with them. To lift when strength wanes. To rest when the body calls. To nourish not just with food but with connection. To balance stress with stillness. To seek medical help when needed, but never forget the power of daily discipline. Because in the end, testosterone is not simply a number on a lab report. It is a reflection of how a man lives his choices, his rhythms, his care for himself. And when those choices align with nature's design, renewal is not only possible, it is inevitable. When a man first notices that his firmness is weaker, his energy lower, or his recovery slower, he often assumes it is only about intimacy, a private matter. Something to ignore, to cover, to hide. But beneath that silence lies a startling truth. Problems with circulation in the most private part of the body are often the first whispers of much larger dangers. Doctors have called it the canary in the coal mine of men's health. Why? Because the arteries in the groin are smaller than those in the heart or brain. When plaque begins to build, when blood vessels stiffen, when circulation slows, the first place it shows up is often where a man least expects. Months, even years before chest pain or a stroke, the body sends this early signal. Reduced firmness, weaker flow, diminished response, and yet too many men dismiss it. They laugh it off, they avoid it, they hide from it. But behind that symptom could be the beginning of heart disease, diabetes, or hypertension. Studies show that men who struggle with circulation in their intimate life are up to 50% more likely to suffer a heart attack or stroke within 5 years. What feels like a private frustration is often a public warning. This is not meant to frighten, it is meant to awaken, because early signs are not doom. They are opportunity. They are the body's way of saying, act now, and you can still change the outcome. Address your circulation, and you don't just restore intimacy, you protect your heart, your brain, your future. Consider the link with diabetes. High blood sugar damages blood vessels, eroding the inner lining of arteries and reducing their ability to dilate. Over time, this hardens circulation, limiting blood flow not only to the groin but also to the eyes, the kidneys, the nerves. A man may first notice it in his bedroom, but the real danger is in his bloodstream. Left unchecked, it is not only desire that fades but also independence, vision, even life expectancy. The same is true for high blood pressure. Hypertension silently injures arteries, making them less elastic, more prone to rupture. When this happens in the heart, it becomes a heart attack. When it happens in the brain, it is a stroke. But when it happens in the smaller vessels of the groin, it feels like loss of function. Again, the body is not betraying the man, it is warning him. And cholesterol too plays its role. The buildup of fatty deposits narrows arteries like a dam slowing a river. At first, the narrowing is subtle, almost invisible. Yet in the most delicate parts of the body, even a small reduction makes a difference. What a man interprets as embarrassment may, in truth, be a message. Change your diet, move your body, protect your arteries now. The remarkable part is that improvement is possible. Studies show that when men improve their circulation through exercise, diet, stress management, and medical care, they not only restore vitality, but also reduce their risk of heart disease, stroke, and diabetes complications. In other words, healing one part of the body often heals the whole. And so the question is not, should I hide this? The question is, what is my body trying to tell me? Because those hidden signals are not signs of weakness. They are signs of wisdom. They are the body's early alarm, giving a man the rare chance to act before the damage is irreversible. For centuries, men have been taught to measure their worth in silence, to carry their struggles quietly, to never admit vulnerability. But silence does not protect. Awareness does. Courage does. Seeking help does. Because in the end, circulation is not only about intimacy, it is about life itself. The same blood that fuels connection is the blood that keeps the heart beating and the brain alive. So when a man listens, when he takes the early signs seriously, he does not just reclaim his private strength, he protects his future, for himself and for those who love him. When blood flow weakens, when firmness fades, when energy no longer rises as it once did, these are not only physical events. They strike at something deeper, a man's sense of identity. For centuries, strength, vitality, and virility have been woven into the fabric of what it means to be a man. And so, when those begin to slip, it feels less like a symptom and more like a silent unraveling of self. The man who once felt confident now feels hesitant. He begins to avoid moments of closeness, not out of lack of love, but out of fear of disappointment. He withdraws, builds walls of silence, and hides behind excuses, work, fatigue, stress, while inside, a quiet grief grows. It is not only the body that changes, but the spirit. In this way, health and identity collide. Because for many men, masculinity has been tied not just to what they do, but to how they perform. When that performance falters, shame steps in. And shame is heavy, it breeds isolation, secrecy, even anger. Relationships suffer, intimacy fades, and the man who once stood tall begins to feel smaller, less himself. But here lies the paradox. What feels like weakness is not weakness at all. It is the body's natural signal, one that every man will face in some form. The tragedy is not the change itself, but the silence that surrounds it. For when a man does not speak, he carries the burden alone. And in that isolation, the wound grows deeper. Partners too feel this silence. A wife may sense the distance but not understand it. She may interpret withdrawal as rejection, when in truth it is fear. She may feel unloved, when the reality is that he loves her too much to risk failing her. Thus, a wall rises between them, not of lack of care but of unspoken words. Yet it does not have to be this way. When men dare to speak, when they risk vulnerability, something remarkable happens. Shame dissolves in the light of honesty. Partners respond not with judgment, but with compassion. Intimacy shifts from performance to connection, from pressure to presence, and in that shift, love deepens. Science even affirms this truth. Studies show that men who maintain strong emotional bonds, who feel loved and supported, experience better health outcomes, higher testosterone, lower stress, stronger immunity. In other words, openness is not only healing for the heart, it is healing for the body itself. History too offers examples. In ancient cultures, aging was not seen as decline, but as transformation. A man was not valued only for his strength or virility, but for his wisdom, his leadership, his ability to guide others. His worth shifted from performance to presence. He was not diminished, he was revered. Somewhere along the way, modern society forgot this truth, teaching men that youth equals value and age equals loss. But perhaps it is time to remember again. Because when health and identity collide, there are two paths. One is silence, shame, and shrinking away from life. The other is honesty, courage, and redefining what it means to be a man. To recognize that intimacy is not only physical, it is emotional, spiritual, relational. To understand that a man's value is not measured in his performance, but in his presence. And when a man embraces this, something powerful happens. He no longer hides from change, he grows through it. He no longer fears vulnerability, he finds strength in it. He no longer sees aging as loss, he sees it as evolution. In this way, the emotional impact of health changes can become not the end of identity, but the beginning of a deeper one. A man who is not only strong in body but also open in spirit. Not only capable in action but also present in love. Not only youthful in vigor but timeless in wisdom. Every story of decline holds within it the seed of renewal. What feels like the end is often the beginning of a new chapter 1, written not with despair, but with intention. When a man takes the signals of his body seriously, when he chooses to act instead of hide, he discovers that healing is not only possible but deeply transformative. The first step is movement. Not the frantic, punishing exercise of youth, but deliberate, consistent action. Walking briskly, lifting weights, swimming, cycling, these are not luxuries, but necessities. Each movement sends blood surging through the arteries, clearing plaque, strengthening the heart, awakening muscles that have grown quiet. Studies show that men who engage in regular strength and cardio training improve not only circulation, but also hormone balance, mood, and even memory. Movement becomes medicine, restoring both body and spirit. The second step is nourishment. Food is not only fuel, it is instruction. Every bite tells the body what to build, what to burn, what to store. A diet heavy in processed sugars and fats instructs the body to inflame, to store, to weaken. But a diet rich in lean proteins, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, olive oil, and fish sends the opposite message. Repair, strengthen, restore. Even simple changes, replacing soda with water, red meat with salmon, chips with almonds, begin to rebuild the foundation of health. The third step is rest. Modern life glorifies exhaustion, yet the body heals in stillness. Deep sleep is when testosterone rises, when cells repair, when the brain cleanses itself of toxins. Without it, no amount of exercise or diet can fully restore balance. Men who reclaim 7 to 9 hours of restful sleep often find not only their energy returning, but their vitality as well. The fourth step is stress mastery. Chronic stress is silent poison. It raises cortisol, suppresses testosterone, stiffens arteries, and clouds the mind. But stress too can be tamed. Through meditation, deep breathing, prayer, time in nature, or even simple silence each day, the nervous system recalibrates, blood pressure lowers. The heart beats steadier, the mind clears. In calmness, the body remembers how to heal. The fifth step is connection. Too often, men isolate in times of struggle. Yet science is clear. Relationships heal. Love lowers blood pressure. Touch releases oxytocin, a hormone that strengthens bonds and reduces stress. Even laughter with friends boosts circulation and immunity. Connection is not only emotional medicine, it is biological. No man heals alone, he heals in relationship. And finally, the sixth step is courage, the courage to seek help. To speak with a doctor, to undergo tests, to ask questions without shame. Modern medicine offers tools, whether lifestyle programs, medications, or therapies that can transform outcomes. But no tool works if it is never reached for. The man who chooses courage discovers that vulnerability is not weakness. It is the first step toward strength. Healing is not instant. It is a path of small, consistent choices. A walk each morning. A plate filled with color instead of processed beige. A night of rest instead of scrolling until dawn. A conversation instead of silence. Each act seems small, but together they shift the body's trajectory from decline to renewal. And with renewal comes not only restored health, but restored confidence, A man who feels his body strengthening again stands taller, speaks clearer, engages more fully with those he loves. Intimacy no longer feels like pressure but like possibility. Energy returns, not as the reckless fire of youth, but as a steady flame that warms his life and the lives around him. This is the promise hidden in the body as early warnings. That decline is not the end, but the invitation to rise. That a man is not defined by his setbacks, but by his response. That healing is not about becoming who he once was, but about becoming someone wiser, steadier, more whole. Because renewal is not about chasing youth. It is about reclaiming life fully, deeply, courageously. And in that reclamation, a man discovers that his best years are not behind him. They are ahead, waiting to be lived. There comes a moment in every man's life when he looks in the mirror and realizes the passage of time. His face carries more lines, his hair more silver, his body more reminders that youth has slipped quietly behind him. For some, that realization stings. For others, it awakens a quiet fear. Is this the beginning of the end? But if this journey has shown anything, it is that decline is not destiny. The body, though fragile, is also resilient. It whispers warnings not to punish, but to protect. It slows not to steal, but to invite. Every sign fatigue, diminished firmness, slower recovery is not the closing of a door, but the gentle knock of opportunity. Act now, and you can change what comes next. You have seen how circulation is not only about intimacy, but about life itself, how it foretells the state of the heart, the brain, the entire body. You have seen how hormones, though they ebb with age, respond to care, movement, and connection. You have seen how shame and silence only deepen wounds, while openness and courage bring healing. And you have seen that healing is not found in a single pill or a secret cure, but in the steady rhythm of daily choices carried forward with purpose. The truth is, the greatest power a man has is not his youth, his strength, or even his independence. It is his ability to choose. To choose movement instead of stillness, nourishment instead of neglect, rest instead of exhaustion, connection instead of isolation, courage instead of silence. Imagine yourself 1 year from today. What would your life look like if you began right now with just one step, a brisk walk each morning, a conversation with your doctor, a meal that heals instead of harms, a night of full rest, a moment of honesty with your partner? These are not grand gestures, they are small acts that over time transform. And remember this, you are not alone. Every man walks this path, though too many walk it in silence. By speaking, by acting, by choosing, you not only heal yourself, you give permission for others to do the same. You become an example, a light, a reminder that aging is not a loss, but a passage into a different kind of strength. So let this not be the end of a story about decline, but the beginning of a story about renewal. Let it be the moment you choose life fully, courageously, unapologetically. Because the years ahead can still be the best ones. They can hold vitality, connection, love, and meaning. But only if you step toward them with intention. The body has spoken. The choice is yours. Will you ignore the whispers, or will you answer them with action? If you choose action, you will not only reclaim your strength, you will reclaim yourself.